This morning's breaking news, and in the last half an hour, Rishi Sunak has apologised for leaving yesterday's D-Day events early in order to do an interview with ITV. The Prime Minister posted a statement on X saying that, on reflection, it was a mistake that he'd not stayed in France for longer.
Well, Rishi Sunak also said that he was very committed to D-Day's commemorations, and the last thing he wanted for the whole thing to be overshadowed by politics. But unfortunately, that seems to have been the case, because meanwhile, Lib Dem leader Senator Davey has said he's brought shame on the office of Prime Minister. Well, joining us now is the Minister for Children and Families, David Johnston. Many things to talk to you about, but this is the breaking news this morning. Rishi Sunak says sorry. Why did he do it?
Well, Rishi Sunak was at the commemoration yesterday in Normandy, and he was also at the one in Portsmouth the day before. But as you say, he has now apologised for leaving earlier.
What he actually said was sorry and that he made a mistake. And I suppose the point is that it doesn't look good, does it? It doesn't help people like you coming out, trying to sell the Conservative cause, that something that would have been in the diary for such a long time suddenly got changed. We understand because of an ITV interview, and it was, just to be clear, the time slot that Downing Street, the Prime Minister, gave to ITV for that interview. It wasn't like ITV were forcing that time slot. He came back with that priority. It looks like a mistake. He's admitted it was a mistake on a very important day.
So, and I think all you can do when you make a mistake is apologise for it. I think the last thing this Prime Minister would want to do is have people think that he has anything but the utmost regard and respect and love for our veterans. He's done huge amounts to promote veterans himself, putting our Minister for Veterans Affairs in the cabinet so that their voice is always heard. As I say, he was at the commemoration in Portsmouth on Wednesday, and he was there yesterday, but he did leave early.
Yes,
people
Mr. Johnson, look, I'm sure you're absolutely right. I'm sure he is committed, and I'm sure he's done those things. I guess the point is, it looks bad. You're in the middle, 4 weeks away, less than. There is going to be an election, and you just said all you can do when you make a mistake is apologise. I suppose what the country wants to know is he doesn't make the mistakes. The Conservatives have been in party for 14 years. This is a critical time. It looks like a lack of judgment at the very least.
Well, I think I can't really add more to what he said. You know, he has said this morning that it was a mistake, that the last thing he would have wanted was politics to overshadow our commemoration for our veterans, and he has rightly said sorry for that, and I think that's the right thing for him to do.
On apologising, Mr. Johnson, is it time that Rishi Sunak apologised for lying about how he's come up with the numbers that he claims are Labour's tax plans? He claimed that they were, he claimed that they had come up, they'd been devised by civil servants. That was a bald-faced lie, wasn't it?
Well, the overwhelming majority of those, 21 out of 27 of the policies that are costed in that document were done by independent Treasury officials. There were then, I think,
which by your numbers mean a third weren't. So what you're saying is it was just a third of a lie.
Well, no. The three of them were then from other official government figures. Two were actually the Labour Party's own figures, and then there was one that had been done independently by a bank. And the interesting thing about this is that this week, Labour have been denying that it's precisely £2,094 per household that their taxes would mean. But they're not denying those are their policies, and they're also not denying that taxes will go up. And yesterday it was reported they're considering 12 separate tax increases. So,
sorry, David Johnston. David Johnston. I mean, it's not just the numbers or the civil service. I mean, it's the independent watchdog, the Office of Budget Responsibility. Even your friends at the Spectator, not known for its left-leaning views, have looked at your numbers and looked at the claims that are being made about Labour and said they're nonsense, they're porky pies.
Well, I don't accept that. And we have seen in those figures, if you look at an analysis, if you take, for example, Labour's policy on their green policies, we've used a figure of 4.7 billion a year rather than the 28 billion pounds a year that Labour initially said they would cost. They subsequently said, well, it won't cost that, but they're keeping all the policies. And when you've got a report yesterday that they're considering 12 separate tax increases, it's no surprise that they are disputing whether it's precisely £2,094 per household, but they're not disputing that their plans will mean taxes go up.
Well, let's look at your promises on numbers on tax, right? You're going to raise £6 billion, apparently, on a clampdown on tax avoidance. We don't know whether that's also going to include closing the beneficiaries of big corporates on offshore, etc. Who knows? No detail on that. £1 billion for national service, £2.4 billion for the triple lock, apparently. Now, here's something that I don't get. £60 million over 10 years for 30 new towns. The British public aren't stupid. David Johnston, how much does it cost to build a new town? It's more than £60 million. I suspect, I don't know, but the Prime Minister's wife, his family probably own significant property worth more than that.
Well, this is funding that will be used as start-up money to get those towns on the road to being created. Of course, it won't pay for the entire town, but part of that £6 billion that you've talked about, and by the way, the Labour Party have a very similar figure. They just intend to use the money on different things. But part of that money, as we're announcing today, will be used to considerably increase the amount that people can earn before they start to pay a charge on child benefit from £60,000 to £120,000. And that's going to mean a tax cut for around 700,000 families of about £1,500, which I think will be very much welcomed by those families.
Right. So, but the problem is that money has been allocated for all sorts of things, and there's a challenge onto whether you can fund that tax cut in the first place. And then separately, those who earn over £120,000 will be the ones that benefit, which is an income into a household that most people can only dream of. How much is child tax allowance? Because 20 minutes ago on the radio, you didn't know. I wonder if you've managed to get that clear in your mind.
Yes, yeah, and again, going back to the theme of apologising when you make a mistake, I apologise for not knowing that figure. It's not run by the Department for Education, where I'm a minister. It's run by HMRC.
Sorry, but you are announcing a policy on child tax allowance. That's the thing.
I am the minister who's talking about this threat, and as I say on that show, I did apologise for that. £25.60 for the eldest child, and then £16.95 a week for the children.
If you're seriously preparing for government, these are things that you have to know. What you're demonstrating to us quite clearly is you don't believe you're going to win an election. Otherwise, how could you, in all seriousness, as Children's Minister, knowing the impact this is going to have on families and especially children, sit back and laugh when you're asked that question? You need to know this number, don't you?
I was laughing at my own mistake. The point about child benefit is that it's not in the Children's Minister's role or indeed the Department for Education's role. And that was why, when asked what's the precise rate of child benefit, that I didn't know the answer. I now do know the answer. There are all sorts of questions you can ask people that are policies from other departments that they won't know the answer to. I was able to answer the questions that were all about how this will be paid for, what it's going to cost, what it's going to save families, and so on.
OK. I think the problem is it's about trust and you understanding what it's going to mean, which is behind all the issues, isn't it, to do with promises and figures and the row, indeed, around, whether Rishi Sunak misrepresented those allegations to Labour. That's the problem that you have. But look, thank you for giving us your time this morning. We know you're very busy and your time is limited, and that's the end of ours. So good to talk to you this morning.
Thank you.